if I'm being honest, I didn't really think of music as something people study scientifically or analytically. I mean, I imagine that people did it. I just didn't really think of it as a topic that would be covered in school. And not until recently did I really know what the term meant. I just knew that I like music, and I think about it a lot more in depth than other people appear to. I think it stems kind of from my, I guess I'd say perfect pitch or relative pitch. I don't know how to test which it is, but I'm able to hear a note and I can either I know it or I can figure it out, or if I hear a song, I can figure out the harmonies, or I can tell you what key it's in, if it's major or minor, I'm 50% of the time. But I've always been acutely aware of just music, and I notice that other people aren't really as good at that. Like they sing a song from memory and it's not in the right key, and I'm always like, why aren't you singing that in the right key? And my brother's the same way, so I thought it was normal. And then I got older and realized, oh man, not everybody is as in tune, pun intended, with music quite like I am. And then when I got older, I started listening to music and paying more attention to it and realizing small things like instrumentation. Now I can tell the difference between a recorder and a flute, or between a violin and a cello. If I've listened to enough of an artist, I can tell when they've featured on other artists' compositions. Or I just started reading liner notes of albums. Like I've got all these albums, I got Chicago, or right on top of my record collection here, I got some Jimi Hendrix here. I've got some 100 albums down here. I've got, Fleetwood Mac. Actually, I didn't plan on wearing this shirt for this video, but that's pretty topical. But I've amassed this wealth of knowledge of artists. I've listened to some probably 2,000, 3,000 albums, mostly from the 60s to the 80s, but also a little bit 90s, and then after that contemporary. But I memorize artists and names, and I know producers, and I can know the sound. I know when something's been produced by David Foster, like the Chicago album that I just pulled out. This was produced by David Foster, 1982, and he produced one by The Tubes, and I just know his sound. Or Lindsey Buckingham, I know when it's him on guitar, because he's got this just particular sound that I don't think a lot of other people really pay attention to. So I'm like, man, I got to do something with music. And only recently did I start looking into it and realize that it's kind of a science that people do study. And it's made me start to wonder, okay, if it's a science, then we can look at it theoretically, like from a theoretical standpoint. So does that mean, like I noticed that I kind of tend to have a favorite key, or certain songs sound better than others, and then I started to pay attention to patterns, and I realized that certain keys appeal to me more than other ones do. And there are always exceptions, of course, but by and large, like the key of E is always really pleasant to me for some reason. I know this song by George Harrison, or Talk to You Later by The Tubes, that one, those are both in E, and I'm like, that's cool. And then I hear Roll with the Changes by REO Speedwagon, and I'm like, C, like, yeah, it's cool, I like the song, but it's not as ear-pleasing to me. So it makes me wonder, is that something genetic, or is it just people with perfect pitch, or is that genetic in and of itself? Are there factors that determine what music people like, what genres, what keys? Are there things that dictate that kind of thing subconsciously that people just aren't aware of? And I just really want to be able to study that further. And I've done, even for fun, I've done a couple of forms. I did some Google Forms, just put them together, where I took an Alan Parsons Project album where each song practically is sung by a different vocalist, because that's how the Alan Parsons Project rolled in the 70s. 80s actually was Eye in the Sky, 1982. And I got a widely different just array of answers. There was not really a single song that stuck out more to people than others. It seemed like every single person had a different favorite and a different least favorite, and I'm just like, wow, that's really surprising. Because of course not everybody's going to like the same thing I like, but I'm like, wow, I didn't know that I could get such polarizing results from an album like this. So it's just small things like that. I've only done a minimal research, I guess, of my own. I'll go and I will go edit Wikipedia articles left and right. I just checked, it said I had some 700 edits made over the past couple of years since I've gotten interested in it, and I'm like, man, I wish I could get paid to do this, but I don't have the educational background necessary to break into that world. I have a bachelor's in German. I finished that last year. I speak German fluently, and that's cool, but it's not really my main focus. So something with music history, musicology would be where I really want to go. unfortunately embody the 70s look, with the long hair. And if you look around my room, I'll pick this up for a second. I got singles up here, the vinyl hanging. I got colored vinyls hanging from the lights left and right. I got all these, my favorite albums up here. I got some more on the wall over here. And then we have my main collection down here. It's just, music is just my life, I guess. And I'd like to, break into that world however I can. And it's hard to do when you don't have the professional background necessary. The history of rock and roll class I took from you, Professor, was not the first music class I'd taken, because I've done some musical theater and some choir, and that helps me realize that I have this awareness for music more than other people do. And my dad is also a big music fan. He's kind of where my inspiration for all this music came from. But taking part in choir classes and doing jazz vocal ensemble at Fullerton when I was new there in 2019, 2020. And then doing a class with, I can't remember his name, there's another professor, Stephen something, is a younger gentleman. It was a history of music class back in the 1700s or something. Orchestral mostly. And then your class, those are the only classes I've really taken, so I'd like to have an in-depth knowledge. I haven't paid as much attention, admittedly, to what jobs there are out there. I've recently started looking, and there are some that sound like they're doable, like things I'd be interested in. But more than anything, I just want the knowledge, the experience. I want to be able to know what it's called when, I don't know, I hear terms like mixolydian, or I hear sharp and flat, everybody knows, minor and major, everybody knows, but there are all these terms that my friends who actually study music know, but they don't have perfect pitch. And I'm not studying it, but I do have perfect pitch. So I'm just like, man, how amazing would it be for me to know what all these terms mean and employ them on a regular basis consciously, since I have this skill that apparently it seems most people aren't able to learn unless you learn from a young age. I guess it seems like the jury's out. But as somebody with perfect pitch, who's got this fixation, this fascination, this hyperfixation, if you will, on music that nobody really listens to anymore, who's my age in particular, I feel like it's a very unique skill set that I possess. So I'd like to move further and, further my goals and do something that's more in the music area. So, that's about all there is about me that I can think of right now. This is probably a little bit more abstract than you were hoping. I don't really know about musical form, music development over the centuries, understanding of music history. I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of how society was in general back then, because I'll hear people writing protest songs about, you have Fortunate Son by Creedence Clearwater Revival from CCR back in '68. I'm like, okay, that's talking about which war was it again? Vietnam War? I can't think of specific examples right now, but I gather all the societal changes that happen, the changes that happen in society, I can gather through music. The Cold War was prevalent the entire time, and I hear that, and It's a Mistake by Men at Work, or Russians by Sting in 1986 or something, 1985, and then you have groups like the OJs and doing Ship Ahoy in 77, 78, what was that, protesting the concept of slavery and stuff. And there are a lot of things that still happen today. The best way to look at what's going to happen in the future is to analyze the past, I think. And I think the most fun way to do that is through music. And that's pretty much everything about me that I can think of musically related. If there's anything else that you need from me, besides the draft that I'm currently working on, let me know. Thanks, Professor.